Hello everyone. When I was but a little boy, me and my family were living in Texas, and there was one place that we would always go to on every occasion. Birthdays, anniversaries, having good grades. We would go to medieval times. I had Pepsi in a beer mug and understood why blood sports were popular. It was great. However, because I was filled with great whimsy and ambition to the metaphysical machinations of the world, with unrestricted internet access, in my bout of knowledge, I decided to research medieval times. Damn. It was fucked up. Plagues that almost killed the entirety of the human population, alcohol that was just a stronger version of Welsh's grape juice, trepanning being considered the pinnacle of medical science, and a pope that was really into chestnuts, and horse fornication. And children.
Hi, I'm Jared the Subway Guy.
But even in this age of hyper-advanced technology, there is but one thing that we carried over from our ancestors in the 1200s. The need and sheer desire for blood sport. Admit it. When you watch Sunday Night Football and you see a player's leg bend backwards, you aren't crying tears of horror. You aren't averting your gaze because of viscera. No, you're embarrassed. A deep and solemn shame to show your church group who you really are, because those weren't cries of horror, they were lamentations of bloody revelry. What better way to experience this primal urge for bloodshed than to simulate said bloodshed through the medium of gaming? Just a fair warning, if you try doing this in real life, people will tell you that you're performing the acts of murder and aggravated assault with a deadly weapon. This is when you tell them that you aren't killing anyone, you're getting more in touch with your heritage. Half Sword is a game that is currently, during the time of recording, in early access, but is filled with so much content and pure, agonizing bullshit that all I can say is buy this game. It's not worth $25, but definitely wait for it to go on sale. The best way to describe this medieval torture experience is an honestly creative and brilliant way of giving yourself Stockholm Syndrome. For some reason, unbeknownst to even God himself, Half Sword always finds a way to reach out to me, and when I think I'm out, it pulls me back into the dark pits of despair. I've tried getting away from it. I've tried putting the game down and walking away for a few days, but no matter what, I will always have memories lingering in the back of my brain of the insatiable bloodlust, and by God, with how well this game performs, with even the most basic functions of any physics engine, you're gonna love it more than I do my own setup. Oh, and speak of the devil, I got these new sound dampeners. I hope my audio is crisp and clean and that you love it very much. But like most, if not all games that involve killing a mass amount of people, let's talk about the story. The story is fairly simple. You are nothing but a lowly beggar. So to make your fortune, you decide to settle in a local fief that is the medieval equivalent of Philadelphia in all aspects of the comparison. Exorbitant rent prices, abysmal alcohol, horrid taxes, and a series of booming underground to the death fighting rings that will forever ingrain itself into the culture for many centuries to come. As a lone Philadelphian, you need to conform to the societal role so that you can ensure you continue paying for your keep by bumming off the local innkeeper for as long as you remain a lowly peasant. The job is simple. Take up fights from the local undesirables from the village comedian and earn your bag through bagging their corpses. It's never insinuated how these fights begin, but in my personal headcanon, I believe he pisses anyone and everyone off for the sheer fun of it. When viewed through the modern lens, jesters are often portrayed as fools, idiots, people to be gawked at by the public. Putting it simply, these weren't just clowns. They were political commentators who would be allowed to hold public rallies where people would often show their disliking for the king's policies or actions, and jesters were allowed to do it through the use of humor. And one of my favorite jesters in all of human history is a man who went by the name of Perkio of Heidelberg, a court jester who was affected by dwarfism. He started his life as a button maker before going on to greener pastures, as he would go on to be a cupbearer for the Habsburg lineage. Luck would change, however, as he was promoted to a court jester. This wasn't based off his comedy or sharing remarks based off the governor's policies. It's because during his time of being a cupbearer, he became an uncontrollable alcoholic. In fact, he was so good at drinking himself to near death that he was brought before Charles III and promoted to be the wine overseer, where he began to drink over 5 to 8 United States gallons of pure medieval wine, which is essentially just drinking a fancier version of prison hooch. He had drinking songs, jokes, and entire festivals dedicated to him. His cause of death was put in a letter that was never really revealed to the public, but one of the theories that is highly understandable available and is mostly accepted is that he drank water. You may be a jester to the locals of Heidelberg, but you are a king in my heart. Back to the game. The number one question that's probably on your mind is, why am I insane? Why is a picture of JFK getting closer on the screen? And why is it that every time I open a textbook, I see him everywhere I go? Well, those don't matter. What you should be asking is, why are you fighting these obviously fixed duels? It's for the same reason I sell guns to African nations. Sweet sourdough. To maintain a hefty wallet to keep your bum shared mattress, you need to either kill people of higher classes, or start participating in duels with higher and higher bets. Not only bagging you more money, but also bringing you closer to a class tournament. A class tournament being a small series of fights that you need to participate in order to grow to the next class. To get more weapons, but also get more money. Here's to all you money lovers out there. Here's a simple tip. No, a mechanic that you can use and abuse to no end. Hop into a champion duel and simply just give up. Congratulations, you just won yourself a retribution. A retribution is simply losing against somebody and then having to fight them again. But luckily for you, these fights will give you a ton of money. So by periodically giving up and then fighting in these constant retributions, you can become a very, very rich man. Another thing that you can do to save money is to simply steal armor off people. Once your enemy is dead or given up, press the interact button with any part that you want and simply hold the E or Q key. Now you can successfully be fully armored at militia level, but with all systems of currency, you need somewhere to spend it. After all, the economy's not going to crash itself. Your coin can be spent in all the stalls openly available to you in the inn. There's the banker offering a multitude of services, from selling random tools seized from the local peasantry all the way up to full plates of armor, but also being able to insure your weapons, meaning that if you lose it on the field, or you just so happen to meet your gruesome end, your armor or weapon will be completely recovered and brought back to the inn. There's a blacksmith who will gladly allow you to make your own weapon that matches your desired attributes. Blasteos Postea. An armorer who will reluctantly give you add-ons to your armor, a trainer who will let you spar but also let you purchase mercenaries. And personally, if you purchase mercenaries, you're a bona fide pussy, and it's a waste of money. And if you wait until nightfall, there will be a man who will gladly soothe the souls of the dead for 10 to 20 gold apiece. Because if anything in this harsh, corrupt world is cheap, it has to be your immortal soul. Because the economy was insanely different from the way it's run now, we don't have any checks and balances to ensure stable prices. No. We just have to take the seller's word for it. And in Philadelphia, everything is expensive. Insurance, making your own weapon, fitting your armor with upgrades, even just sleeping, all of it requires coin. Now let's talk about obtaining it. All the fights that you partake in require a bet, a preset price on your combat which will be multiplied once you win the fight. Although, the worst thing this entire game has to offer through these fights is the sheer stupidity. Anytime you enter a fight, regardless of it being a champion duel or just a regular fight, all of it feels like RNG. Here's the learning curve of Half Sword. I thought it's fun, and the devs of Half Sword seem to see it too. So they gave you a death. And another death. And here's another one. And another one. And another one. And another one. And another one. There's like 9 million fucking ways to die! I'm saying this to you full-heartedly, and to whatever god is willing to listen, that most if not all of the deaths that you'll experience in this game will feel like the product of RNG. Fighting beggars is the equivalent of boxing. However, the skull fractures are legal. Fighting peasants becomes less about skill and more about who has the bigger stick. If you have a simple kitchen knife and you happen to run into a man with a big axe, it becomes a major problem. And when you rise higher in the classes, don't think full-plated armor is gonna save you. You see, your character has a set weight limit of items and weapons they can carry onto the field, heavily determined by your weight, which can either rise or drop depending on how much exercise you were able to get. That's right, if you believe yourself to be a high-speed death machine trapped in a douchebag's body, you gotta cut the bullshit and earn your night tab. But regardless of how much you lift, plated armor will either be your greatest asset or your worst nightmare. Every time you play with full plated armor, not only does your stamina drain incredibly fast due to the sheer weight that it's holding on you, but every time you fight somebody else who's also wearing plated armor, if it's holding a weapon regardless of what it is, the AI will have a complete change of heart, going from HEMA to being masters of contact sports. They will literally shift their weight into you, forcing you to stay pinned to the ground, with multiple pounds restricting your movement. And God forbid They use a mace, because when you're on the ground, they will become utterly retarded and start indiscriminately swinging their weapon into your body. But for a moment, let's think that you're the most unlucky individual alive. Once you're knocked to the ground, there's nothing you can do. You can hold W, which can bring your character up, but most of the time they'll just be laying there, having their body beaten in by a mace, or cut to ribbons by an axe. Because RNGesus decided that your time has come. Yeah, just give up when you end up on the ground. There's literally nothing you can do. I take it back. This game doesn't give you Stockholm Syndrome, it gives you an unwanted appreciation for fatalism, with the biggest lesson this game will teach you is that you will never learn. You can't really effectively block attacks, because you never know which ones are coming. It's nearly impossible to telegraph people's attacks, so if you use a shield, who knows? Maybe you'll get stabbed in the back of the head. One little stray movement of the arms ending up into your own, and you die. A beggar armed with a pair of shears is far more deadly than paying your wife's alimony with Monopoly money. So no matter what, no matter how many times you go down, you just have to learn to stop trying to be fluid. The gaming world is weak. Soft. We have forgotten what it means to top frag. Our heroes used to be low honored dishonored runs, spy frags, but now our heroes are fragless, weak, corporate chills, OnlyFans models. We let the game devs dictate the power of our arsenal, and we are shocked to find ourselves oralist. But history knows the power of the knife, of coincidental trick stabs. Face stabbing a 12-year-old medic on 2 Fort, you will learn the value of the knife. And soon enough, you will become a savage. Because if you can be a savage, you need the right weapon. I am no fool, you puny mortals. Every time I die, I reawaken. Every time I've been attacked, I have learned. My knowledge expands with every knife driven into my thigh. My consciousness ascends every time I am bludgeoned. Through my knowledge of living many lives and dying countless times, I have learned to make a weapon to surpass Metal Gear, a fearsome force of nature, a weapon that has been burned in the hot fires of hell and quenched in my blood of righteous fury. Behold and listen, naysayers, to what your king offers you. A sacred gear, a god hammer. The god hammer is ultimately cracked, but why is this my weapon of mass destruction? It all heavily relies on the physics engine of the game. Isaac Newton stated it so, that the acceleration of an object is dictated that the net force applied to an object is directly proportional to its mass and the rate of which it accelerates. However, if you're familiar with Bill Nye or the idea of a pendulum, you'll understand that gravity does not affect the movement of an object no matter how much it weighs. So in all reality, if you have a very long hammer with a stick that balances out the weight of the hammerhead, then I need you to kindly consider Newton's first law. An object in motion will stay in motion, and a series of bones, ligament, and armor will be put into a natural motion. This hammer is the best in the game. It's better than the Baron's own weapon. Here's footage of me playing as a peasant with the hammer, striking at a few knights. Oh, look who's on top. I'm not going to give you the recipe for the god hammer. I want you, my disciple, to learn that on your own. And also because I kinda lost the footage of myself making it, so this is really a relic. Of course, you don't need weapons like the God Hammer. If you're more a fan of a first-person view, unfair advantages, and cheesing the game, there's a single weapon you can utilize. The crossbow can be found inside of a wooden crate in the woods area, and if you so happen to be lucky like I am, it'll spawn alongside with a quiver containing multiple bolts. Because of how the game works, if you stab anyone in any certain way, it'll simply cause them to give up or die. But with the crossbow, you're essentially stabbing them 13 feet away at 200 feet per second. But this won't save you, as the higher you go in class, the more armor and chainmail your opponents will wear. Combine this with more armor, a slow reload time, and being unable to change any of your keys from reloading, you're basically done for if you can't adapt. But now I need to discuss the classes, in which there are multiple of them: beggars, peasants, mercenaries, men-at-arms, soldiers, veterans, and knights. Oh, and the Baron. The end goal of the game is to acquire the Baron's immaculate duds by killing them multiple times, every piece being given to you for each kill. But before that, let's bring you back to where you belong. Beggars are the lowest of the low, fools who are either financially unstable or just poor dice players. Beggars throughout the medieval ages were viewed as a disease, a pest, and yet they were viewed as the wisest of scholars and intellectual superiors within the vast inbred kingdoms. Surprisingly enough, As a beggar, you can find yourself enjoying a rather luxurious life if you know how to play your con. And if you are blind, you are screwed. Actually, if you suffered from any form of physical or mental disability, you are always going to be seen as a lowly beggar. A beggar, much like me on a Good Friday, will get into drunken fistfights and use anything their bumming off welfare salary can buy. The beggar class is perhaps the easiest in the entire game, simply for the fact that you can flail your arms around and watch them tumble to the ground. You are finally able to use your begging funds to get yourself a hoe and get to work. Unlike the destitute lifestyle of the beggar, the peasant is not given this luxury. Being a peasant was often viewed as a curse, more so than being blind. This is because peasants had to pay exorbitant taxes just to stay on their own farmland. Due to the systems of feudalism, when you were on someone's land, it didn't matter what they did or were intent on doing. You basically owned the person who was on that land. Much like in many cases today, you were not allowed to cut down any trees or hunt in anyone's land if it was owned by a lord, with any violation of these laws being subject to castration, beheading, or even exile. Peasants do of course have the ability to joke about beggars, but as soon as their heads start rolling after they decide to pay their taxes just too far things shy, look who's laughing now. Peasants generally have access to all the other weapons more akin to farm equipment, but nonetheless, you're still able to wallop and even behead your enemy with a swift blow. Your past skill set with the beggar will need to be replaced with keeping your distance and plan your blows. With any form of blunt weapon, aim for the head, elbows, or knees, as these will knock out the target or disable them. Let's say that you were able to survive being a peasant. You paid your taxes, and you beat up a local beggar. The king applauded this action of removing a cancer from society, so he let you stay in the kingdom's walls. But then, she looks at you. And when she looks at you with her deep eyes, you feel nothing but warmth. Maybe you shouldn't fight somebody for wealth. It's time to impress somebody. As a commoner in the medieval ages, you had a lot more opportunities compared to everyone else. You weren't subject to luxury like the beggar, and 95 to 80% of people in the medieval ages died and had a horrible life, but it was better. Often just being a laborer, doing your job, being able to afford a pint of beer, and then go home. But a commoner in half-sword is able to afford a sword, and with it, you need to carve your own path. With the commoner, I suggest you stay away from swords at all cost. Stick to staff weapons, as if they have a longer sword, they're gonna beat your ass. But as a commoner with access to the flail, it can kill. If you're lucky, it can wrap around an enemy's neck, pull it in, and it'll snap it from behind. After your constant shows of bravery and street cleaning were noticed by the queen, she released you from your prison sentence, and she even appears to be taking you as her fancy. So taking up your flail and grabbing a newly formed helmet from the blacksmith, it's time to start making some real money. Mercenaries during this period were considered way better off compared to the others. You could become a sellsword overnight if you had a weapon and a bargaining price. You'd be surprised to learn that not all medieval armies were made up of honorable fighters who desire glory to the name of God. If you wanted that, go join the Templars. Most if not all of the armies were made up of men who would kill for a daily salary, and I can't really blame them. And you're also in luck because your armor isn't standard issue. Nationwide standard issue hasn't happened yet. Sure, there is a type of weapon and type of insignia you can wear to show your loyalty, but more often than not, you were using what you had. Buying your own tools, equipment, and most importantly, your food. You'd be given rations, but they were incredibly sparse. The mercenary was one of the closest things you'd have to a poor man's militia, and for it, you can have all the weapons of a soldier and even a knight. Much like the commoner, the militia's best weapon is the flail. If not that, then use a halberd. If not that, use a hammer. And if not that, how'd you even get here? I feel like this video is long enough, so I'll just have to name off these 3 other classes by strat and weapons rather than giving you the lore. Soldiers are men who wear better clothes, and also a lot more armor, so it's best to keep sticking to the strat of trying to get them from the back. Veterans are just mercenaries with more armor. Not soldiers, mercenaries. So here's the strat. You run in with your sword and half sword, bash the shield out of the way, and then stab them in the neck. Men-at-arms, quarter-pounder versions of knights. These bastards are like reluctant tin cans. You gotta beat them open. Use something like a hammer. Back to the story. You finally did it. The queen who fancies you had decided that your service was so honorable, she granted you knighthood. So now as a loyal follower, you need to keep things under wraps. All until the day can finally come. But that requires an extra step on the ladder. So now, you're a knight. Knights throughout the Middle Ages were one of 2 things. Either landed or unlanded. Unlanded landed knights were more so military rather than actual lords, even given accommodations for their service. However, landed knights, much like samurai, are retainers to the daimyo and his han. Knights were more directly connected as lords to the baron and his fief. When you play as a knight, you basically won, but at the same time, you're facing men who will crash your game if you're playing on high or medium graphics. And you'd be utterly surprised that all of my footage is all in low graphics, and it's still incredibly beautiful. But with these horrible knights, use weapons such as hammers and maces, since it would be utterly useless to use a sword against a knight and brute force them effectively. But no matter the class, no matter your standing in society, you will die. And much like the medieval era, if you haven't paid off the priest, you're in for a fun time. If you haven't paid off the souls of the dead, you'll have to fight them in the abyss. Everyone you kill will meet you in the afterlife with the ability to grab and bite you, which will kill you immediately, with some armor that you're currently wearing being able to use as padding. Oh, and by the way, zombies that you kill later on in the game will also be wearing armor, making blades utterly impossible to use against them. But you'll have solace knowing that people suffering from necrosis have very loose grips, usually not able to hold onto a weapon if you knock it out of their hands. But the most effective strategy for dealing with zombies is hitting them in the head. Usually, if not all the time, one single blow to the head will result in an instant kill. You'll know this whenever they start doing labored breathing. But another thing you can do in the abyss is find golden goblets, drop all of your weapons that you have insured, and then holster any piece of gold that you can find, as you can sell it back to the banker for a few extra bucks. But let's say you survived the prospect of death, facing your enemies head on. You have slain countless individuals. The Baron and his posse were nothing. You killed off multiple fief hierarchies. With your bravery, service, and luxury, you were seen by all as a beloved candidate for your queen. A lady who sits so elegantly in the aisle, awaiting your hand in holy matrimony. All of the bloodshed, tax evasion, and bumming off your uncle paid off, as now you sleep in silk sheets every night. Your queen holding you within her tender embrace, and bosom softer than the clouds of the heavens, practically carved and catered to you like a finely constructed chair. But the more you think about it, all the killing, the deaths, the destruction of families, as your beloved slowly dozes off and her beautiful vibrant eyes fluttering ever so gently into an endless rest, with her arms clasped around you to ward off the winter air, all you can think while wrapped in silk garments is one thought: was it worth it? And that was how I met your mother. Now go to sleep, my child. All the more slop awaits you when the time comes. The rest of the game is very few and far between. After you kill the Baron a good few times, there's really nothing you can do afterwards besides continuing to do random garbage, and if I'm being Anne, literally just do whatever you want. As in the endgame, most that you can do is just forge random weapons and see what happens. With the game never really getting harder, and I suspect that there will be more content in the future, so I say stick around. And if there's going to be content that warrants a $25 price tag, I say that is completely unreasonable, because this game isn't worth $25. $20 maybe. I love you, Half Sword, and I always will, but there is something so horrid about making me pay $25 to administer high amounts of cortisol into my veins. And I'll do it again. As I was finishing this piece of unadulterated bullshit, Half Sword just got a massive update. And if anyone is willing to buy the game right now, just know that the update came and they added a lot of stuff. So I won't go over it, but I'll simply say, experience it for yourself. This video was perhaps my favorite to make simply due to the content available. And for the outro, I wish to thank Hildegard Blingen for allowing me to use their music in the video. They make bardcore covers of modern day songs. Link in the description. I have been Jason Via 101, and I hope you like, comment, and subscribe, and you are all beautiful people. For the keep!